Hi and welcome. BS PAS 911 contains one diagram which I'm quite proud of. It's called the Fire Strategy Objectives Matrix, and it gives up to 16 objectives for every fire strategy based upon life, property, business and the environment. I actually came up with one form of this many years earlier, back in 1996, when I was starting my own business off called Kingfo at the time. And this is then developed into what we see today. Anyway, I'd like to introduce this in a short presentation, which I hope you'll enjoy, which explains the 16 objectives. Thank you. Let's start with life safety. As you can see, there are 4 occupancy groups. The first one are the occupants themselves, the people who are in the building most days, who know the building, know the layouts, and are probably able to evacuate in the required manner if there is a fire. The second group are visitors, those persons who may be in a building only specifically for special cases. For instance, visitors could be the passengers at a railway station. Visitors could be those who are looking around the art galleries. Consequently, visitors have their own set of requirements that are separate from the occupants of the building. Contractors are those who are working in the building, and those people may be in parts of the building where it's just difficult to escape from in the event of fire. They may require extra minutes, and I wonder how many fire strategists consider this when they do the evacuation calculations. And finally, firefighters. It's paramount that if a firefighter is asked to tackle a fire in a building, that the protection systems are there in place so they can safely fight that fire. Property protection is sometimes not specifically included in fire strategies, but in some cases other parties may have an interest in this, for instance the insurers. Again, we've divided into 4 different areas, starting with the building, which is the most normal consideration we make when we think of property protection. But sometimes the fabric of the building could also be valuable and treated as a separate category. I'm thinking sometimes the linings of the building, some of these could be very valuable. For instance, if you think about frescoes in some churches, and they could be more valuable than the building itself. Fixed assets, the equipment in the building could be the computer data processing centers, it could be manufacturing resources, it could be all sorts of things that are also valuable. Sometimes we need to consider these as a separate entity when it comes to property protection. And finally is those movable assets that can be carried out of the building in a fire, but sometimes the methods used are not really conceived and thought through beforehand. For instance, in a stately home, it could be works of art that could be worth millions of pounds or dollars that needs to be brought out safely, but sometimes the method of doing this is not fully thought through. Business, it's an area that we do know about, we consider, and we also know the fact that most businesses that suffer fire do tend to have problems in the longer term. But let's look at this, the 4 different areas we've divided this into. We have short-term operations, which is how the business is going to survive in the next few days or weeks. Longer term operations, what we need to consider after a fire in terms of how the business will perform in the next year or 2. Confidence in the business, which means after a fire, will the business be able to maintain its relationships with the customers and suppliers? And finally, the mission, how the business that experiences the fire can operate. I'm thinking of business actually involved in fire safety themselves and how they would look to the wider world if they do suffer a major fire. Let's move on again. And finally, environment. Again, we've divided this into 4 different areas. Environments probably will be considered more so in coming years as part of a fire strategy, as there is a move towards looking at what a fire can do. Again, 4 different elements of environment. Internal, which is how the fire will affect the internal parts of the building. Would it be able to be used after a fire? External, I'm thinking of neighbouring buildings, how neighbours could be impacted, environmentally speaking, due to a fire. Locality is what a fire can do to the local area, whether it's causing problems, is contamination of local rivers due to firefighting effluent, or it could be other factors such as a release of toxic substances due to the fire over the local area. And then, of course, there's the long-term aspects of a fire that could be things like affecting of the local land, and perhaps the land can no longer be usable in the longer term. So there you are, 4 groups of objectives: life, business, property, and the environment. We hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please click on like and also subscribe to the channel. Many thanks, and see you again soon.